I noticed my parents before they noticed me. The courthouse was already filling with quiet conversations and the rustle of case files. Lawyers greeted one another with practiced smiles. A deputy directed people toward the gallery. Everything felt ordinary. Then my mother looked up. She didn't wave. She rolled her eyes as if she'd just discovered another problem she'd have to explain away. My father saw me a second later. He lowered his head and studied the floor with an intensity usually reserved for bad news. Neither expression surprised me. I'd spent most of my life disappointing them, not because I was reckless, not because I was cruel, because I kept choosing a path they couldn't understand. My older brother became an engineer exactly as my parents had hoped. My sister joined the family business. Their lives made sense to everyone. I disappeared into public policy, judicial administration, years of work that sounded painfully boring whenever relatives asked what I did. So, you're basically a government clerk? An uncle once laughed. I stopped correcting people. It was easier. Today my parents assumed I was here because I'd somehow gotten myself into trouble. They hadn't asked, they had simply decided. I sat quietly several rows away. There wasn't much left to defend. Years ago I would have crossed the room and explained everything. I would have searched for approval hidden inside another difficult conversation. Eventually you learn something. Some people don't misunderstand you because information is missing. They misunderstand you because they've already finished writing your story. The courtroom settled. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The first few procedural matters passed without incident until the judge began reviewing appearances. Then he looked toward me. His expression changed. He stopped speaking, leaned forward slightly. Wait. The room became unusually still. He adjusted his glasses and looked again. Is that really her? Several attorneys turned toward me. I felt every pair of eyes following theirs. The clerk quietly confirmed my name. The judge smiled, not broadly, just with genuine recognition. I thought it might be you. He paused before addressing the courtroom. For anyone wondering, Miss Carter served on the advisory working group that helped redesign several administrative procedures our district now uses. Many of the efficiency standards this court adopted came from recommendations her team developed. He nodded politely toward me. We're grateful for that work. Nothing dramatic happened, nobody applauded, but the room changed. A court officer I'd never met gave me a respectful nod. One attorney whispered something to another. The clerk smiled as though recognizing a colleague rather than a stranger sitting in the gallery. I hadn't moved. The only thing that changed was what people understood about me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my mother staring, not proudly, confused, as if she'd accidentally opened the wrong book and discovered she'd skipped several chapters. My father looked at me for the first time that morning, really looked. The hearing continued. Cases were called, arguments were made, evidence was discussed. Life moved on exactly as courts are designed to do. The recognition lasted less than a minute, yet somehow it rearranged the entire room. When the session ended, several attorneys introduced themselves. One mentioned reading an article I'd written years earlier. Another thanked me for speaking at a statewide training conference. A clerk asked whether I'd be returning for next month's committee meeting. Each conversation was brief and professional. Nothing felt exaggerated. Just ordinary respect between people who happened to know one another's work. My parents waited until everyone else had left. My mother approached first. I didn't know. It was the most honest sentence I'd heard from her in years. No, I answered gently. You never asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. I wasn't really anything to argue with. My father rubbed the back of his neck. I know what you thought. His shoulders dropped. I suppose we were wrong. The apology never fully arrived, neither did an excuse. Only that quiet sentence, we were wrong. For years I imagined this moment differently. I thought that if they ever realized who I'd become, something inside me would finally settle. Instead, I felt peaceful. Not because they'd admitted their mistake, because I realized I no longer needed them to. Professional respect had never been the goal. It simply revealed something I'd spent years trying to explain. Other people had been listening, while my parents weren't. As we walked toward the courthouse doors, my mother asked whether we could have coffee sometime. There was hesitation in her voice, not entitlement. Hope? I didn't answer immediately. Some distances aren't crossed by a single conversation. Recognition can happen in an instant. Trust almost never does. I'd like that, I finally said, but we'll have to start slowly. She nodded without protesting. For the first time in years, she accepted a boundary instead of trying to erase it. Outside, people hurried past, carrying briefcases and folders, each absorbed in lives I would never know. My parents walked toward their car. I walked toward mine. No celebration, no dramatic reconciliation. Just three people leaving the same courthouse with very different understandings of what had happened inside. For years, I believed my worth depended on convincing my family they had underestimated me. I was wrong. My life had continued growing while they kept looking at an older version of me. The judge hadn't given me dignity that morning. He had simply recognized it. And sometimes that's enough to remind you that the people who know you least may still see you more clearly than the people who watched you grow up.